Hi everyone, welcome. Out here on my bench you can see I've got my supply of prepared bedding as well as a nice collection of kitchen scraps for the worms, and mixed in with the kitchen scraps you've even got the Halloween pumpkin of mine that I chopped up into little bits, and about half of what they're getting today is also just a collection of pumpkin. And the worms that I've got in my sights today are the buddy bins, the red wiggler bins that have been teamed up now for quite a while. One of them is the younger of the two, is the original worms of mine, and then the other one is just a generic collection of red wiggler worms. 12 days ago we fed them the last time, and this time I think hopefully things are good from a moisture perspective. Last time we had to add water to the younger bin, and the older bin had actually been left uncovered because that was too damp. It had been left to dry, but we did restore plastic coverings to that one last time. They're both covered with plastic again because the hope was that they're kind of at the normalized moisture state now, and hopefully they remain that way. But if we have to make adjustments, we will. So let's get them up on the bench and get them fed. When I'm giving my worms food like this, pumpkin especially, I always anticipate that this is almost acting as a sponge, that it's basically water. And once all the water comes out of it, a little bit of vegetable matter for the worms to chew on, but there's also a good deal of moisture that comes out of it. Most fruits and veggies are that way, but I don't know. I remember handling a whole big bowl of this stuff once after it had been frozen and it thawed. And as I touched it, it almost just collapsed in my hand and all the moisture just dumped out of it if the moisture hadn't already dumped out of it. And it gave me the impression that the stuff is very moisture laden. So when I feed with it, I anticipate that I'm also bringing with it a good bit of moisture too. See, we've got a worm hanging out on the top surface, waiting to greet us. Hey there, wormy. You can just hop off and go back down into the bed. We're going to remove these top coverings from here briefly. Get them out of our way so we can come in here and give them their feeding. So this marker here, this coffee filter, indicated to us where that last feeding had been placed. It was right here down the middle. The coffee filter's holding up quite nicely. I don't see many holes in it. I saw a couple spots where they might have nibbled through it a little bit, but not a whole lot. Yeah, that bubble wrap seems to be doing a pretty good job. There's so little dry material out here on the top surface. A little bit around the edges where the plastic doesn't cover things, but otherwise it seems like a good moisture level out here on the top surface, caused by the plastic terrarium effect. So the last feeding, let's see if I can remember. I think there might have been a little bit of, ooh, some worms hanging out. I believe there might have been a little bit of cantaloupe, maybe a banana peel, I don't know. Just kind of winging it at this point. I did breeze through the last video pretty quickly, and I did get to see what we fed. Oh yeah, I remember now. So besides feeding the fresh stuff, which were some fruits, I believe, we also encountered a good bit of leftover asparagus chunks that we had collected up and returned to the feeding. This thing, I wonder, is this asparagus too or something else? It feels tougher somehow and different, the way it snaps in half. Weird. Maybe it was the stems of something, some sort of leaves or whatever. Maybe that's what we just saw there. Oh, okay. Now I'm being reminded even further of what was in this system. It's our orange. You wouldn't be able to tell it's an orange from its color hardly anymore. Unless you tear it open a little bit, it seems to show a little bit more of its color. It's so weird how this has just been sitting here for so long. Definitely looks like there's worms hanging out on it, and in it even, maybe. Some adventurous wormies finally getting down into the orange, which goes back probably more than a month at this point. I don't really remember. Okay, I was correct. There was some cantaloupe, but they've only left the rinds. Looks like they're still working down some of the melon off the rinds, but for the most part they've gotten most of it off. Maybe we'll see a little bit more of that. Here's another chunk of it. That one too might have a little bit more stuff on it. Yeah, these corn cobs, these are leftovers too that we bumped into last time. those are the sort of things that are going to take forever, that's for sure. And, well, you know, not bad. The orange I didn't expect a whole lot of progress on. Oh my goodness, what's this? Something really caught the attention of the worms. Was it just this paper towel for some reason? That seems hard to believe. That a paper towel would get such a rise out of the worms. I assume there's some sort of chunk of leftover food that they're getting really interested in. It might be this, whatever it was. I just don't remember what it was. I might have to go see if I can refresh my memory somehow. Although, I don't know. I thought I smelled orange or something citrusy about it. I could be mistaken. Alright, well, that was a little bit of a exciting worm encounter there. Bumping into them, enjoying something that I can't even identify anymore because it's so far gone. That's the interesting thing about these worm bins. Even if it's something like a piece of orange or something that's got a very distinct and fairly strong odor to it, it almost loses all of its smell within the worm bin somehow. I don't know. I think that just might be the result of the bacteria moving in, and they're the ones that sort of control what the off gases and the smells are going to be like. I don't know. There's got to be some explanation to it, though. Huh. Okay. This also has like a little pattern to it. I can't tell if this is maybe just some sort of stitching or whatever pattern on a paper towel, piece of paper towel. Okay. I tell you, I'm just questioning one of the stats I have about this system here. I think I pretty much flashed the same exact series of statistics, but I didn't have them like in this tabular form. I just had like a series of bullets under each bin. But there too, I believe I made reference to this this first bin here, the older of the two, the 203-day-old bin, now getting its 19th feeding once we give them their pumpkin and veggies. Started out with what was estimated to be fewer than 1,000 worms. And the one thing I would say just from coming in here, and I know I've said it over and over again almost every time I come in here with that statistic written down, just to acknowledge the fact that it does seem way off. And I think most people would probably tend to agree. All right. We can explore what's out underneath the edges at the end once we're covering up the feeding zone. I'm definitely curious to see how things look out there. I'm just trying to get a sort of a read on the moisture level in general. Going through the feeding area, it seemed like there was a good high degree of moisture around the feeding zone. And that's sort of to be expected, so I'm not really treating that as representative of the entire bin. I think once we get out to the outer edges, we'll be able to get a better sense of how this bin is actually shaping up as far as moisture goes. So the bedding they're getting today, as I showed you earlier, is just like a mix of shredded cardboard and paper, and I mix in leaves, and then the whole thing's dampened along the way and mixed a little bit to, ooh, that's a lot of bedding. That's okay, I think they'll appreciate it. So yeah, there's a good variety of stuff in here. And this batch hasn't really been used much lately for whatever reason, just been sitting there for quite a few days. So I think it'll be nice and cozy for the worms to move into. We'll put the orange in the middle, because that's kind of where I go looking for any sort of unusual oddity items. This little chunk of whatever it is that they really got jazzed about might just be a piece of orange that chipped off, I don't know. And these asparagus bits, they'll go at some point too, eventually. Corn cobs, certain things just take a while. It's interesting. Not all foods are equal. Very cool, very cool. I think we'll give them a little bit more bedding since we're putting frozen stuff down. This way it'll just go directly onto some paper that's free of any worm traffic. So what do we have here? Pretty good amount of stuff. Here I've got some things that are sort of stuck together. I already got a cucumber chunk down here, so if I find little bits of tomato like these, we can leave them here and these big chunks can go to the next system. Cucumber seems like a fair split so far. Maybe we even give them a couple extra chunks over here. And yeah, we've got to definitely dish out a little bit more of this pumpkin for sure. Now, it was the other system that I thought was a little bit more dry, and I thought maybe if I made it more pumpkin biased in the other system, then more moisture would end up going in there, as opposed to not so much in here. So, you know what? I'm going to save what appears to be more pumpkin bits. I got 2, 4, only 6. I got to have a whole lot more than 6 here. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So I got at least 50% more pumpkin bits remaining for the next bin. And we're going to use that as a method to try to compensate for moisture, you know, because last time when we went into that system, we went out here to the outer edges like I'm doing now in this bin and finding all kinds of worm traffic out there, indicating to me that the system's got the right moisture level out there. Worms are really comfortable to be out there. In the other system, it seemed like when we searched both outer edges, we found no worms. And it was for that reason we even added a little bit of moisture last time with my squirt bottle. Here, the moisture level is probably just going to even increase because of this pumpkin. And that's what we're going to try to achieve in the next system as well. So before we cover up here, let's just examine the outer edges here too. Both systems. Yeah, I'd like for both systems to have a moisture level similar to what's here. This would be the, I guess, the gold standard, I think. I like the nice damp, you know, material. The worms do too. But at no point do I feel like it's clumping or getting muddy or sticky. And even, you know, I could tell from just looking at my glove too to a certain point that it's not sticking to me as much as exceedingly wet stuff would. Alright, so here and there's a corn cob bit. I just always feel like I want to try to submerge everything I possibly could, but I think we'll be just fine like this. We've got all of our feeding zone indicator coverings here. We've got our top coverings of newspaper bits here. And then on goes the bubble wrap at the end. So it looks like we're in pretty good shape over here. Let's get these little guys covered up and then we can move on to feeding the younger of the two bins. Let's get them out here now. Here we go. So if, yeah, I mean, I guess the option would be to just spray moisture in again if it were necessary, but I kind of prefer the, I just prefer the idea of adding moisture to my systems through the foods that I give them. Although at times, you know, it is just not possible to keep up that way. So adding moisture the more straightforward way of just spraying it in is, you know, always a good option. Now, I'll admit, 12 days have passed since we last fed, but I did come in here to check how things were previously, so things are not in the perfect state that they were, like untouched since the last feeding 12 days ago. I did come in and I did actually start observing how, you know, it's not like the material's deadly. There's a worm right there, but nothing like what we saw in the other system, right? In the other system, as soon as you reached in there, you saw worms everywhere in the outskirts, and I'd really prefer to see a little bit more moisture in this system. And the stuff will still flow nicely like this. That's the part I like. And there's that tipping point, though, that tipping point that I would not want to let it get to, which is where it starts to all clump together and get sticky and muddy. But I think you'll agree, even here too, you know, we bump into a worm here or there, you know, not totally putting them off or not putting them in danger if they do wander out there. So unless those are the only two worms occupying this whole system, you have to assume that the rest of them are huddled around where we applied the last feeding. So let's check them out and get them fed. So nice, this material. Just interesting, you know. I mean, the other bin's older, but somehow this system feels like it might, I don't know. Its castings just somehow seem more mature, more further along. Here I'm already starting to see some of the leftover food bits, stuff that we already found as leftovers last time. Okay, here we go. And since the last feeding was stuff like this, cantaloupe melon, that's what we're probably going to see the most number of worms attracted to, is the leftovers of that. Yeah, not too many leftovers. Here and there is something really drawing there. Oh, banana peel. You could tell. But it's really getting torn to shreds. Look at that. They're just going crazy on that banana peel. Yeah. Let's turn them upside down so they're not thrown off by the light so much. Alright, whatever. I just like to sort of see how the leftovers of the previous feedings are holding up and gauge the progress of the last feeding. It does seem like, you know, a 12-day interval like we did here. I think the previous check-in had a 13-day interval between feedings, and these worms seem to be doing pretty good with the amount given every 12 or 13 days. So I think we could just keep it up at that pace. I guess my feedings are pretty average in size, or at least if you compare them one to the other. Sometimes I don't come down here with quite as much food, other times I've got way more. Sometimes I've got the coffee, other times I don't, so it's definitely a changing thing. So I have no specific standard for what one feeding equals, but they're all pretty close on average. So that's kind of my measure. Someday I should probably, I don't know, it's really one thing that doesn't interest me so much. I hear multiple people talking how they're now tracking their system about their, you know, their worm bins, and, you know, even keeping track of information such as how much the materials all weighed as they were entered into the composting system, keeping a tally of how much any given worm bin has processed as far as, you know, materials put in. And it's interesting, you know, but it's so hard to account for. It might be interesting if everything had a sort of corresponding moisture percentage value, and then you could sort of deduct the moisture content, and then you could really get a sense of what you're putting in the bin, whether it's straight up nourishment or just moisture, which gets utilized as well, but in a slightly different way. I don't know. It just seems like weight measurements are interesting, but could tell us so much more if we had more info to compare it to, or to look at it from the perspective of. So yeah, definitely putting in more juicy stuff, even this middle piece of the cucumber rather than all the peels. That's going to bring with it a good bit of moisture. So I think this is going to be beneficial here too. Large chunks of tomato, not just the skin. Another good chunk of cucumber. So yeah, these worms are going to love this feeding because it's so heavy in moisture content. Even giving them the ice crystals that have formed on the bottom of the plastic container as a little extra boost to the moisture. So yeah, I'm kind of hoping that, you know, by returning the plastic coverings like we intend to do at the end here, will hopefully help the system retain all the moisture that has just been added through these veggies, and we'll forego what we did last time, which was simply taking the squirt bottle and wetting the material in the system down. This time we're going to see if we can help compensate a little bit just by you know, giving them some good damp foods. So let's get these little guys covered up and put away, and we'll be done. Look at all these worms hanging out in this pile here. All right, don't need to spread them out too much, but I guess I'm just looking to level things here for the most part if possible. All right, that's pretty close. Very cool, very cool. One thing we didn't find in this bin was a feeding zone indicator, but we did find a huge hole surrounding the middle of the top covering paper, which makes me think that maybe there was a feeding zone indicator in here, but one that had been completely chewed up since last time we saw it, perhaps. I don't know. Figured I'd sort of try to tuck away the hole in the middle by unfolding the outer edges and trying to increase this thing's cover a little bit better. We've suddenly kind of given it some terrain now, so maybe the worms will find it more interesting to come and explore. We'll see what happens. All right, everyone, that's it for today's check-in. Pretty good check-in, if you ask me. think my only mission trying to equalize moisture in the two systems appears like it might be on the road to recovery, although here it would be nice to see a little bit more moisture, I must admit. As much as I like the smooth flowing material, when it's a little bit drier, I prefer also seeing a material that is such that the worms want to be in all of it, you know what I mean? So, alright, that's just my take on it. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always very much appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel too. Alright everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.